And so the thing about alignment, when you are fully aligned with yourself and with your priorities and your goals and your purpose, I'll tell you what, it is unbelievably empowering. I mean, you can accomplish more, you can do more, you can create more, you can connect more. But when you are out of alignment with yourself and your goals and your fundamental purpose and values, I'll tell you what, as awesome as you are, it is unbelievably disempowering. I mean, think of a train that gets knocked off the tracks. I mean, man, that is a crash. And it's certainly not empowering in any way. And so there are 7 steps to total alignment, realignment, that I want to share with you here today. Hey everybody, I want to take a couple of moments here today and talk about 7 steps to total realignment. And I know that's a pretty ambitious conversation that we're going to have here today. But I think it's really important because, ultimately, I work with so many people who need a realignment, if not a total realignment. And for me, this came out of a trip that I took a little while ago to Mexico. And in that trip to Mexico, it was, to one of these all-inclusive resorts. And my wife and family and I, we went down with a group of friends. And it was a really fun time. And all of the fun things that happened in those resorts happened on our trip. But for me, when I went down, I was in a place where I needed to get realigned. It had been a very busy season in my life and in our business. And I was really kind of feeling like, man, I don't just need, a margarita on the beach here or an all-you-can-eat buffet at a Mexican resort. I need actually a deeper level of realignment. And, I'm so happy to say that I went there and that's exactly what happened. I mean, your vacation doesn't just have to be fun. Your vacation can also be a wonderful opportunity for realignment. And so for me, when I went down there, I was able to get that. Now, alignment, what does alignment even mean? Alignment means arrangement in a straight line. It means being in the correct or appropriate position. And so you could imagine sort of a train that's on its tracks. And when the train is on the train tracks, it's aligned. Now, that same train, as amazing as it might be, it could be the best high-speed train on the planet. But as long as that train is not on its tracks, it's out of alignment and it lacks power. And so the thing about alignment, when you are fully aligned with yourself and with your priorities and your goals, and your purpose, I'll tell you what, it is unbelievably empowering. I mean, you can accomplish more, you can do more, you can create more, you can connect more. But when you are out of alignment with yourself and your goals and your fundamental purpose and values, I'll tell you what, as awesome as you are, it is unbelievably disempowering. I mean, think of a train that gets knocked off the tracks. I mean, man, that is a crash. And it's certainly not empowering in any way. And so there are 7 steps to total alignment, realignment, that I want to share with you here today. And, here's my theory. If even one of these steps helps you get back aligned, then I will have done my job today. And I'll feel very good about that because I care deeply about you. And at Flourishing Workplace, we care deeply about you and your organization. And so each one of these 7 steps to total realignment apply not just to the individual, but they also apply to the team and they can apply to the workplace and to the group. So the very first step I think we need to total realignment is focus. Focus. Now, you can have it all. That's what I like to tell people is you can have it all, but you can't have it all now, and you can't have it all at the same time. In other words, when I got down to Mexico, the first thing I recognized when I started this process of realignment was I was focused on too many things. And yes, ultimately I can have it all, but I can't have it all now, and I can't have it all at the same time. So I need to focus. Now, we all know that where your focus goes, your energy flows. And when you are focused, you are powerful. But I'll tell you what, realignment in your life will take more than casual focus or mediocre intention. If you want to be realigned, I mean, imagine that train that's off the tracks. You have to intentionally get it back on. And to get a train back on the tracks, often you need heavy equipment. Maybe you need cranes. You need all kinds of things. Once a train is knocked off the tracks, it takes a super amount of focus to get it back on the track. And I think the challenge in culture today is our devices have made us very unfocused. And I'm telling you that as the OG sort of ADD, ADHD guy. I mean, I was 7 years old when I got my first diagnosis with a mental health disorder or a mental health diagnosis, and that was hyperactivity disorder. And, a few years later, they invented ADD. And so they said, well, hyperactivity disorder, Abe, doesn't quite describe you accurately. So we're going to promote you right to ADD. So they gave me ADD, and then I had ADD. And then a few years later, I don't know if they invented a new one or maybe they added some things to it. And they said, well, actually, Abe, ADD doesn't quite capture your level of dysfunction. Actually, you are ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. And so listen, focus is really hard for me. I mean, it's not something that's easy. It's probably why I talk about it so much. Now, as an OG ADD, ADHD guy. Now I'm a little bit older than 7 years old. You may have figured that out by now. So I've been walking and wrestling with this for a long time. I can tell you that it is possible. As a matter of fact, people with ADHD can be amongst the most focused on the planet. If you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, dude, you don't get me, bro. I get you. I get you. Let me tell you. But like any muscle, you have to develop the capacity to focus. It's not something that comes easy for you, especially if you have ADD or ADHD, if that's how you've been described, if that's how you've been diagnosed. And so what you have to recognize is that you can just tell yourself this story, well, I got ADD and therefore I'm just going to be, tiptoeing through the tulips without any focus for the rest of my life. Okay, that's one option. Sure. But if you do that, I think you have allowed your diagnosis to define you. Your diagnosis should describe you, but it should not define you, right? In other words, it should not be the totality of who you are because it represents a part of your sort of genetic and mental state, but it doesn't represent the totality of who you are because the totality of who you are is also about your choices, your habits, your practices, your rituals, all of those things. And so imagine a person with ADD or ADHD who doesn't add anything into their life in terms of rituals, habits, practices, routines that's going to help them get focused. Well, they're going to be in a horrible place of a lack of focus literally for the rest of their life. But imagine that magic of ADD or ADHD, because it really is a magical diagnosis. I think it's a superpower and more people need to start seeing it that way. Imagine if you started seeing it that way. This is a superpower, and that means that though I may have a challenge focusing, I can actually focus on many things all at once. And so what I'm going to start to do is to leverage that superpower in such a way that allows me to align my focus and my priorities down the same path. And then you build a bunch of rituals and practices and habits that help you to do that. You're like, well, what do you mean, bro? Well, how about exercising every day? Exercise is an amazing way to unleash the endorphins and the dopamine in your life that will help you get more focused. And you're sitting there telling yourself this story, oh, I got ADD, bro, I can't focus, when maybe you just need to exercise. How about like sitting down and opening up this thing called a book and reading for 15 minutes a day? You're like, I have a hard time reading. Okay, no problem. How about you develop that muscle? Okay, how about eating healthy? I'll tell you what, high sugar foods, really, really high bad fat foods will mess up your brain so that you can't focus. But you eat the right kind of foods, all of a sudden your system is going to calm down. You're going to be able to focus. How about prayer? How about meditation? How about journaling? How about deep breathing? How about taking a walk in nature? Would you like me to keep going? There are unbelievable practices that you can utilize to help you get focused. So when I was in Mexico, when everybody else was sleeping in from the night before, heavy drinking, I said to myself, I'm not going to drink. I'm not anti-drinking, but it's just, that's not what I'm here for. I'm going to wake up early, go down to the beach. And as I needed to get realigned, my run, my prayer walk along that beach, my meditation, my deep breathing, I could sense my focus returning. It was a gift from God. I can't begin to tell you how amazing it is when you still all the other voices, like just running around in your head, like at random, and you're just like squirrel everywhere, but you invest in focusing. And all of a sudden, those other voices, they just get quieter. And now you have one or two voices that you can focus on. It's unbelievably transformative. And for some of you, that's the thing. Listen, realignment for you is going to take more than casual focus or mediocre intention. You're going to have to drill into this. Yes, you're going to have to wake up earlier. Yes, you're going to have to put down that Snickers bar. Yes, you might have to stop eating the high fatty foods all the time. Yes, you might have to exercise. But in the end, your mental health, your physical health, all of those other areas are going to help you to align and to focus. Okay? The non-controllable, I have the ADD, ADHD diagnosis. The controllable is all those habits, rituals, routines, and practices that I'm doing every day to build my focus. So the first step to realignment is focus. The second thing is to decompress. Now, years ago, one of my part-time jobs, I've had so many part-time jobs, when I was, by the time I was 16 years old, growing up in Toronto, just outside of Toronto, I think I probably by that point had at that point, probably 10 different jobs that I had already worked. Got my first job when I was like 7, 8 years old to help put food on the table because we didn't grow up with a lot of money. And I learned this interesting lesson when I was I was probably 14. And I remember I was working at a grocery store called Sobeys. And I don't know if you heard of Sobeys. It's a Canadian grocery store. And I was, had this X-Acto knife, and I was cutting the plastic, wrapping on these packages of like 8 big bottles of pop, these 2-liter bottles of pop. And if you look closely, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not there anymore, but it used to be all the time, this little sign or this little sticker on the bottles that would say, contents under pressure, handle with care. And, what was I, 14, 15, and I'm just slicing open the plastic wrapping on this package of 8 bottles. And there was this lady, she comes up to me right there and she's like, hey, can you help me find the Cheese Whiz or something like that? And just at that moment, I wasn't paying attention. I sliced off the plastic wrapping and I nicked the bottle itself. And it was a bottle of cream soda. And this nicked bottle, contents under pressure, handle with care, it sprayed all over this lady. It was a crazy moment. Somehow I kept my job. I kind of felt bad for her. I didn't mean to do it, but I just wasn't paying attention because she had come and asked me, where's the thing? Anyways, it's an example of a person who maybe needs to decompress, not the lady and not me, but that bottle. I think a lot of people are going through life and it's like contents under pressure, and they're just so fragile and they're just like, you can't rub them the wrong way. You can't say anything wrong to them. They're just like super sensitive all the time. And it's just like they're Debbie Downer, they're anxious Alex. And it's like, hey man, just calm down. But you even saying that, pisses them off even more. Why? Because they need to decompress. One of the things I discovered when I went to Mexico, on that little trip, was that changing the environment did not change my mindset. And so some of you are trying to change your mindset by changing your environment. What actually changes your mindset is when you decompress. Okay, so rather than me nicking the bottle and then it sprays everywhere, I just needed to take the cap and open it properly. Because when you open the cap properly, what happens is it decompresses. And so now that carbonated pop doesn't come out spraying everywhere, but it comes out properly in a nice beverage that you can actually sit and drink and sip away at. Why? Because you've decompressed it properly. I want to help you decompress. I'm not sure how you decompress, but I have figured out a couple of things that have helped me. And I call this the ABCs of decompression. The first thing is to acknowledge what you're carrying. Right? Like, why are you trying to carry this burden that, you're like hiding? Like, like recognize you're carrying something. Just yesterday I did a workshop with these beautiful ladies. It was a leadership workshop and these ladies were all like, old enough to be my mom pretty much. And they were just in it. And one of the ladies was like, man, I feel so guilty because I'm not accomplishing all these goals that I set for myself. And I said to her, look, let's just step back and unpack what you're carrying right now. And she said, what do you mean? And so I started telling her, like, hey, you came in here. You told me you're a grandmother. You told me that, you're a mom. You told me that many of your grandkids have special needs and you're looking after all of them. You also told me that you work in a job. Plus you have a husband who's injured. Plus you've got this going on. Plus you got that going on. Like, how about you just acknowledge that right now you're already carrying a lot, right? So just acknowledge it. But secondly, breathe. Right? There is unbelievable power in your breath. And this might sound so simple to you, but simple works. It doesn't have to be simple and it doesn't have to be complicated in order to work. As a matter of fact, sometimes the most complicated solutions lead to the most unspectacular results. Why? Because we're so busy overcomplicating it. So listen, acknowledge what you carry, breathe, and then give yourself compassion, right? I think that's how we decompress. So on those beaches in Mexico, I was just acknowledging, yeah, you know what? I've been carrying a lot. I'm not trying to be some hero or some martyr. I just for me, I was carrying a lot. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to breathe. I'm just going to let it out. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give myself some compassion here. So the first thing you got to do is you got to focus. The second thing that you've got to do is you got to decompress. But the third thing, and this one is so important, is now you're ready to rejuvenate. I think that a lot of the time, people are trying to rejuvenate before they decompress. And so that's why I notice how these things go in sort of a progression. I start by focusing and then I decompress. Now I rejuvenate. When you are rejuvenated, you are unbelievably strong. Matter of fact, you are unstoppable. Rejuvenation leads to strength. And so what do you need to do to rejuvenate? Well, you got to hop in the water. You got to get refreshed. You got to cool down. You got to find a place of rejuvenation within your life. I mean, now actually in Mexico, it gets pretty hot, especially if you're Canadian. And so, in the heat of the day, like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sun is bearing down, what do? You either hide in your room and turn on the air conditioning, or you jump in the water. And the water allows you to rejuvenate. Now, some people say, well, I want to jump in the water. I don't want to get a sunburn, whatever. Okay, cool. Then you go in your room and you turn on that air conditioning. But either way, you find a way to rejuvenate. Like, here's the question. What nourishes your soul? What feeds you mentally, emotionally, spiritually? Because you're most vulnerable when you are hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. You will make the dumbest decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. You will unintentionally hurt people when you are hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. You might even end up with the wrong person because you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And so what is it going to take for you to no longer be hungry, to no longer be angry, to no longer be lonely, to no longer be tired? That stuff comes from the inside. That stuff doesn't come from the outside. That stuff comes from within. And so, number 1, get focused. Number 2, decompress. Number 3, rejuvenate. Now you're ready for number 4, 7 steps to total realignment. Now you can start to strategize. Oftentimes we are strategizing kind of too soon because we haven't rejuvenated. So I want you to see, focus leads to decompression. Decompression leads to rejuvenation. Now that I'm rejuvenated, I'm ready to strategize. We can't properly strategize without focus, without decompression, and without rejuvenation. Because focus, I want you to think about it, that's about centering, okay? Decompression is about release. Rejuvenation is about renewal, but strategy is about direction. Direction always should come after focus, decompression, and rejuvenation. Now, I'm not trying to overcomplicate this, but if you rush to strategy without that opportunity for rejuvenation, well, let's do a thought experiment. Imagine you creating a strategy when you're still in a place of crisis and you haven't rejuvenated and you haven't decompressed. You and I both know it's going to be a completely different strategy than when you are. You will create a strategy called fight, flight, or freeze. Why? Because your amygdala is hijacked, because you can't even think clearly, because you haven't decompressed, because you haven't rejuvenated, because you haven't focused. So when you breathe and when you focus, now, I can decompress and man, I get rejuvenated. And now it's like, man, I start thinking clearly and my strategy really, really begins to work well. So I just love thinking about these 7 steps to total realignment as a process. I start with focus, then I decompress, then I rejuvenate. Now I'm ready to strategize. And that leads very simply to the next step. Step 5 is now I execute. So even when I was in Mexico, as I began to re-strategize and think about different relationships and business opportunities and things that were going on, all of a sudden, then I started already executing, started sending emails, started moving forward with a sense of purpose. I started, sending a couple text messages, giving people some ideas, giving them some direction, asking some questions. But the idea is that now that I was rejuvenated, I actually had the energy to act on the strategy. That's another reason why you got to get rejuvenated before you strategize. Because if you don't rejuvenate before you strategize, it doesn't matter how great your strategy is. You're not going to have the juice to pull it off, and you got to have the juice. And listen, when it comes to execution, it has everything to do with your daily habits. And I can't emphasize this enough. Like, you are not just a bunch of blood cells and bones, all kind of wrapped up in some skin. You are the product of your daily routines. So what are you doing every day, right? Like that's a legit question to ask. Like, what you do once in a while doesn't matter nearly as much as the things that you do every day. So what are you doing? And I'd love you to be able to actually tell me. I mean, put it in the comments below. Like, what are you doing every day for your daily routine? What are you doing every day to allow yourself to focus, to decompress, to rejuvenate, to strategize? The strength of your execution comes down to the effectiveness of your habits. And so your daily processes will fuel you. And then that allows you to go to the 6th step. And I want to spend just a moment on this. The 6th step in terms of total realignment is to embrace. Now, what are we talking about in terms of embracing? What I'm talking about is it is time for you to go all in. If you want to realign, I mean, like fully engaged, fully embrace, like fully give it your all. Don't give in for 1 second to the imposter syndrome. Don't give in for 1 second to you second-guessing yourself. Don't give in for 1 second to you, listening to the lies of self-doubt and self-limitation and the victim mentality and blaming everybody else. Like, listen, time to put all of that aside, because that will knock you off the alignment that you just fought to get back. So what do you need to do? You have got to go all in. You know what? You're not perfect, but you don't deserve the imposter syndrome. You're not like some, hero, but you don't deserve to constantly be beating up on yourself. And what I've discovered in my own journey is that often I am my worst enemy. And so what I've been learning to do is to recognize that I'm not yet perfect. I haven't yet fully arrived. And yet that doesn't make me an imposter. Now when I did my MBA, we had this thing, and it's kind of a little arcane. I guess I can't even actually remember because I'm not really that smart, but it was called, I think it was called cost accounting. And in cost accounting, you would have to account for what was called a WIP, W-I-P, work in progress. And so that meant, hey, let's say we're building a building, constructing a building, and, the building goes over 1 or 2 or maybe 3 fiscal years. And so you still have to account for the fact that in this year, it's not done yet, but we did a whole bunch of work on it. Because where did that money go? Well, we put, 60% of that building has been done. And then in the next fiscal year, when the final 40% is done, then we'll account for that. So I account for the work in progress here because that is work that's still in progress. Now you are a work in progress. Like, you're a WIP, W-I-P, not like the other one, but you are a work in progress. And I got news for you. You're a wonderful work in progress. Like you're a W-WIP. Like, you are awesome. You're not just a work in progress. You're a work of art. And you don't have to be like fully there to not be an imposter, and yet I found myself, I was beating myself. Oh, you're an imposter. You're this, that. No. Listen, I'm a work in progress. I'm doing my best here. The building isn't complete, called A. Brown, but I'm going to keep going. And so that's this idea of embracing. If you want to totally realign, then you've got to stop giving into the imposter syndrome. Stop giving into you second guessing yourself. Stop giving into that self-doubt. Stop giving into that fear. And then the seventh step is to align. Now, you might be like, what are you talking about? 7 steps to realignment. The seventh step is to align? Yes. What do I mean by that? Align to the people and the relationships that will help you get where you need to go the best. Now, this is where you get to be very selfish. I think in relationships, it's so important. You know, some of you are moms and some of you are dads and some of you are uncles and some of you are aunties and some of you are grandparents and all of that. Absolutely. Keep doing all of those things. But there are some relationships that you have to reserve in your life that are about helping you get where you are called to go. And you have to have the courage, I hope you do, to say no to all of the other distractions. This point, my friends, is so important. I'll tell you what, if I'm trying to realign to myself, and my goals and my values and where I'm going, but I don't align to healthy relationships, yet I'm aligning to toxic relationships, how far am I going to get? How long is my realignment going to occur? Let me tell you, a circle of 1 is never large enough. The closer you are to your mentors, to your role models, and to your team, the closer you are to your goal. And so as I close this here today, 7 steps to realignment. Number 1, get focused. Number 2, decompress. Number 3, rejuvenate. Number 4, then start strategizing. Number 5, start to execute. Number 6, embrace. Fully embrace. Don't give in for 1 second to that imposter syndrome. And then number 7, make sure as you do that you align to healthy relationships. You've got to say no to toxic relationships. Why? Because you care about your destiny and you care about where you're going. So thanks so much for tuning into this. I hope this has been helpful to you. If it has been, please give us a like, give us a comment, give us a share, give us a follow. Share this with others that you may know. And please do check out flourishingworkplace.com. We are deeply interested in supporting you to create an amazing workplace where everybody thrives, everybody belongs, and everybody contributes. That's flourishingworkplace.com. And we'll see you in our next episode.